Hello everybody and welcome to the return of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network. My name is Liam Jenkins and I'll be guiding you through everything Eagles related from the last 7 days and indeed the last few months, because what a roller coaster it has been. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions, in case you've been living under a rock for the last 4 months. I wanted to get that bit out of my system. To say that the Eagles are Super Bowl champions, they're world champions. They defeated the dynasty of the New England Patriots, and that Lombardi trophy was paraded around the city of brotherly love, was hoisted up the rocky steps in front of that incredible museum. And then, of course, Jason Kelce and the team delivered some of the most iconic speeches in recent memory. But where the team go from here is a complete unknown. And we have got so much to get through today, from the signings so far, some important trades that happened, and of course, the NFL draft, which is now just over 1 month away, being held in Dallas, where I'm sure the Eagles are going to have an ace or two up their sleeve to get back for the near embarrassment we suffered at the hands of one former Cowboys star last time around. But I wanted to start with this, and it's something that I feel quite personal about, that I wanted to kind of voice, and it's basically an apology for the lack of this podcast. Now, last year I was really excited to bring this back. The first year I did this show was absolutely amazing. We had some fantastic guests on there, we had some players. The NFL draft show the day before the NFL draft, we had prospects on the show. It was an amazing time for me. And unfortunately, my personal circumstance changed towards the beginning of last season. And I felt that I couldn't give you my best product. I couldn't give you 100% into this show each and every week. And I wouldn't want to deliver less than that. I didn't want to put out a show that was less than my best, that would have been disappointing, or that you wouldn't want to listen to. So I decided to wait and kind of just put it on the shelf, focus on what I could control, and bring this back when the moment was right. And for me, that's right now. So I hope you all understand the reasoning as to why we've kind of been, staring out of the window, looking into the rain, wondering where this podcast has gone. We're now back, and we're back to talk Eagles, and as I say, there is plenty of it. But the one place I really wanted to start, and it's the only place we can start this show with, is one word. And I wrote an article about it recently. I've been banging this drum for around, it must be a year and a half now, ever since the arrival of Doug the Crusher Peterson. That word is culture. We hear it a lot, it's thrown around, it's all over social media, and, people don't tend to realise what exactly it means, they just put it out there. It's the culture of the team, it's the culture of the locker room. Now, if I go to India, the culture is very different to a very rainy, very upsetting, a very dark and dull Britain. Culture's a tricky word to kind of define, but the best way to do so is to just look at the changes in the team. Forget the personnel, forget the players, but look at the difference in the team between that last Chip Kelly year, the first Doug Peterson year, and the Super Bowl winning 2017 campaign. The end of the Chip Kelly era almost saw the team fractured. Some big losses that were lucky to be rebounded with, some impressive victories, for instance, over the New England Patriots, weren't enough. The cracks in the locker room began to show their ugly heads, and before you knew it, the rumours were swirling that Chip Kelly was done in the NFL, that this was too much, that he's not a player's coach. And before you know it, that happened. Chip Kelly was gone. And Jeffrey Lurie made a press conference and stated that he wanted emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. For an NFL owner to look at that and say, I want my coach to be emotionally intelligent? People laughed at it. People didn't understand what it meant. Reporters were quick to brush it off as nothing. And then Doug Peterson walked into a room. First it was Ben McAdoo, and everyone thought the Eagles should sign Ben McAdoo, and that should be the guy moving forward. They lost out McAdoo to the Giants. Peterson was maybe their third or fourth option. Ron Jaworski helped, of course, during that selection process. And it was Doug Peterson, a former tutor of Andy Reid, who got the job. People were quick to say, wow, it's another student of Big Red. The same tendencies apply. He's never called plays. He's too inexperienced. And of course, there was that quote after the 2016 season by, I'm not even going to do him the justice of saying his name on this show, but by going out and saying that Doug Peterson was the most underqualified candidate for a head coach he'd ever seen. Well, that most underqualified head coach somehow rallied a roster of 53 men to a Super Bowl championship. How? You look at year one, and for me, year one under Doug Peterson was incredible. And a lot of people go, well, it was a disappointing season. 7-9. Didn't really end too well. Didn't fare well in the division. Some disappointing losses. Carson Wentz hit a rookie wall. There were injuries. The backfield had no identity. What was there to like? And what we begin to see during that season is the aggressiveness of Doug Peterson and the way that he's able to rally the best out of his players. And as the season went on, the fourth down attempts became more and more fluent. We saw it time and time again where, of course, the Baltimore game stands out to me like a sore thumb. That attempt where they could have changed the entire game if that 2-point conversion had worked. Players like Jordan Matthews and Zach Ertz started to take a shine to their new head coach. They wanted to play for him. They weren't giving up on games. And you know what? There were some really upsetting losses during that season, but the team didn't give up. They didn't roll over. And after an off-season of those 10-10-10 practices, the return of a triumphant Andy Reid invention, which we saw first implemented in Philadelphia, people were like, wow, okay, Peterson's just another Andy Reid. And those intense practices saw injuries to Jordan Matthews, injuries to Malcolm Jenkins, and they were like, well, this is a bit too much. This is a different generation. You can't teach it like how you used to play football. Peterson didn't listen. He stuck true to his word. And he let his players be players. And you know what? The 2017 season, you look at it and we see the touchdown celebrations and we see the euphoria and the excitement that the players play with. And then I went back and I interviewed former Eagles tight end Trey Burton, who I just wanted to say massive congratulations to for landing a very deserving new life in Chicago. And there's one quote in that entire interview, that 20-30 minute conversation that I was lucky enough to have with him, that still, to this day, nearly a year and a half later, holds so much weight. One of my favourite things about Doug is one of his biggest mottos. Let your personality show. You don't hear coaches say that very often. They don't want crazy things to happen. Doug used to say that all the time, and every time he would say that to me personally, it gave me peace. It would calm me down and let me be who I am, instead of being like a robot and trying to impress a coach who likes a tighter ship. Now, if that doesn't tell you all you need to know about Doug Peterson, then I don't know what will. Because after that 2016 campaign, where Peterson inherits a roster where, let's be honest, at the time, it was troubled. Fletcher Cox was holding out for an extension that would make him the $100 million man in Philadelphia, a move that the team were probably a little reluctant to make after what we saw with Vinny Curry, let's be honest. You had the enigma of Sam Bradford. The team signed him to a 2-year deal. They trade up for Carson Wentz, and Bradford throws a bit of a hissy fit. He doesn't attend OTAs. He doesn't want any part of that. He wants to make his point very, very clear. Then you've got Nigel Bradham, who, for whatever reason, is involved in umbrella incidents and punching someone. You've got Darren Sproles missing OTAs for personal reasons. You've got Nelson Aguilar, who is very easy to forget. A year and a half ago, after OTAs finished, was at a strip club with Connor Barwin and had a legal case opened up against him for assault on a woman. Now, of course, that was never charged, but it's hard to imagine that spotlight in such negativity did not impact Nelson Aguilar's season going onward. So Peterson took that year. He then had Brandon Brooks, who was battling with anxiety and mental illness in a locker room of 53 alpha males who are out there to destroy opposing teams. As much as we're becoming more accepting of it as a society, you've got to imagine the NFL's different, because not everyone has got that same level of understanding, that same emotional income capacity. And then you've got Nelson Aguilar, who had his own mental hurdles. And yet somehow the team pulled through. The team were closer together. And you look at those final few games in that 2016 season and how the team broached it, And there was fight there. There was a fire that just wasn't quite burning out yet. The team were just getting started. And then you have 2017. So remember all of what I just said. 1 year later, Carson Wentz entering year 2 of his Super Bowl career. We know the narrative of this season. We know the underdog, the Jason Kelce speech of how nobody was good enough. Everyone wrote the Eagles off. And they did. And they were right. Jason Kelce was 100% right in that speech. But we've heard it all now. I don't need to repeat exactly why and get all fired up and emotional. What you do need to hear is why the team could be so resilient through all of that. Because through all of 2017, it's quite ironic on the day of recording this, considering the recent Michael Bennett allegation, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. They didn't have a single off-the-field controversy. No strip clubs, no arrests, no filming, no strange TMZ videos. Wow, I said Z, so I must be American at this point. Nothing. Just focus on football. A competitive training camp that brought the best out of everyone. Some big trades that included guys like Chris Long, who was so selfless to donate his entire wage for that season to charity. Leaders like LeGarrette Blount, who helped develop Corey Clement, who would later be signed as an undrafted free agent for the Eagles. The team established a new direction. Veterans wanted to come and play. They wanted to be part of that success because they could see it. Alshon Jeffrey saw it just as Torrey Smith saw it. And then the Eagles went on to do the unthinkable. And Nick Foles ended his remarkable narrative in the best way possible. Now, of course, there'll be another chapter to Nick Foles, and he's just getting started, I'm sure. But from being drafted by the team in 2013, or 2012, I beg your pardon, that incredible 2013 season, to then go to LA, or what was St. Louis at the time, and just fall apart a little bit, and then actually debate quitting football because of it, to come back and then win a Super Bowl with the Eagles. That's an underdog. And that's culture. And that is because of a group of 53 men that rallied behind their head coach, who never gave up on them, who never blamed the players, who never made it about himself. It wasn't his system. You want to talk about emotional intelligence now and look back and mock Jeffrey Lurie. Jeffrey Lurie was 100% right in choosing a coach that connects with his players, that understands them, that enriches their life every day they walk into that NovaCare complex building, that makes them want to go that extra mile. All of a sudden, it wasn't just Jordan Matthews staying after practice. Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Jason Peters was helping Derek Barnett. It became a family. It was no longer a fractured locker room as Chip Kelly left it. The players who refused to give effort, such as Dorial Green-Beckham, and were so focused on going, "It's lit" on Instagram, were quickly deported out of the team and exiled. And then you were left with a team that just simply wanted it more. And now they're in a position to sustain that vision. And I didn't know if I wanted to start this show by simply going back and having a look at the complete culture change, but you don't appreciate culture unless you experience it in comparison to something. It's easy to say, wow, the Eagles' culture's so great and it's a winning... What defines a winning culture? Look at a losing one and contrast it. It's stability, it's confidence, it's success. And it all comes from passion and a belief that there is more to this game than just cashing checks and breaking records and individual success. And the Philadelphia Eagles, as Super Bowl champions, have found a winning culture. They've built their own from the ground up. And the most exciting part is, they're just getting started. Thank you so much for tuning in to this show. It is amazing to be back here on the Outside Insider. It's been way too long, and I've wanted for a good few months now to get back into this, and again was waiting for the right time. So if you are listening to this for the first time and you're enjoying what you're hearing, do hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Of course, this show is on iTunes, so head over to iTunes.com. There is a link in the description for that as well. Hit subscribe, rate us 5 stars. You know what, let's create a movement, because for me, before I get on to anything else, before I talk about the draft and the Michael Bennett situation and a lot of the other cool stuff, well, not that the Michael Bennett incident is cool by any stretch, but I wanted to say thank you, because for those of you who don't know, maybe you've just found this on Twitter, or you've been sent it by a friend, or you found it on Facebook. I've been covering the Eagles now for, this is my 4th year, and I started Philly Sports Network in my bedroom, way across the pond, over here in England, in a tiny little town, in a county called Devon, which is a state, but a lot smaller. And I just grinded. I just worked every day. I was covering 5 teams at once, just with the hope that, you know what, I could make a slight difference. That an Eagles fan who was tired of reading the same regurgitated thing over and over again could go onto a web page and go, wow, that's different. I like that. I like that guy. Or, do you know what? I thought that about this player too, and no one else saw it. Or even better, when I was dying on the Sam Bradford Hill, if you were so against it, but to go on an article and read it and really resonate and go, do you know what? I still think you're a lunatic and I think you're wrong, but I can see where you're coming from. And I now view this from a different point because of it. And from there, we then began building a team. We assembled the Avengers. We've now got a team of Flyers writers who are just remarkable and attend every single home game. I was lucky enough to attend the NBA in London as a member of the press. I was able to talk to Brian Colangelo, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and for me that was a life-changing experience. And now, obviously, with the Eagles coming to London next year, or this season I should say, there's another opportunity. And for me, for once, I'm not now on a 5-hour time difference. I'm on the same platform as everyone else. I can meet and thank the people who have been so instrumental to my own motivation and my own development as both a person and a writer. That doesn't go beyond players and coaches and writers. I mean fans like you guys. If you're listening to this on your car on your way to work, thank you. Because without you, I wouldn't have this platform. And this isn't about myself. This is about creating a movement for me of fans that they want more. You know what? We live in a world where everything is so readily available on social media, and almost like that depth has been lost. That fun, that because now it's just a report, it's a notification, and it's, oh, the Eagles have done this, the Eagles have done that. Here's 5 reasons why they've done this and that. We want more than that as fans and as writers. And as someone for me that's given as much as I possibly can to this profession, I just want to put out the best work I can. And if you're enjoying that, that means the world to me. So if you are making that trip to England to watch the Philadelphia Eagles play the Jacksonville Jaguars, let me know. Tweet me, email me, send me a pigeon, not an actual dead, I meant like, you know, a letter on the back of a pigeon. We'll have an event for Philly Sports Network, because I want to thank every single one of you. I want to meet as many of you as I can, because this is much more than just, you know, writing something for fun. It's much more than just seeing it as a career. This is about change. It's about a culture. It's about connecting with people you would have never even met if it wasn't for that platform. And as someone that has been able to meet so many people because of my work, because of networking through Twitter and Facebook and places like that, I want to meet as many of you as you can. So come out for a holiday. Let me know if you're in London, if you're going to be there for the game. We'll have an event on. And I just want to say thank you to as many of you as possible, because I honestly could not have imagined this ever getting to this stage for me, and I'm excited to see where it goes next, and I hopefully will make sure that every single one of you is a part of it. But we're going to get back onto the Eagles before I become a blubbing mess on this podcast, which I'm sure none of you would like to hear. And unfortunately, we have got to talk about something a little bit serious before we do get on to the fun stuff, which is the impact of the free agent signings and what the draft has in store for us and that sort of area as well. But we do need to start, as I say, with the unfortunate report that came out on Friday afternoon surrounding recently signed Eagles defensive end Michael Bennett. Now, of course, this comes on the back of what I was saying about a complete culture change and, you know, the team not having any players engaged in any off-the-field controversy or anything like that. But here we are. Recently signed defensive end Michael Bennett has been indicted for injuring a 66-year-old paraplegic staff member of NRG Stadium during Super Bowl LI. Now, there's a few things to be wary of with this, and the Eagles have already issued a statement saying that, of course, the nature of the case is that it's a legal matter and they're refusing to really make any other comments than that they're doing their homework on it. But essentially what happened was, following the game, Michael Bennett shoved his way onto the field where players were celebrating the absolutely insane win by the New England Patriots. And of course, Marty Bennett, his brother, was on the field. Security personnel, there was a man and a woman. The woman was 66 years old and disabled. They told Bennett that he has to use a different entrance to access the field. He pushed through them instead, including that 66-year-old disabled female who was part of the security team. He pushed through the 66-year-old disabled woman to get onto a football field instead of just walking round. Which is a disgusting act, no matter who you are or what way you look at it. I don't care what social status you are. I don't care if you're your average Joe, if you're a rapper, if you're a singer, if you're a football player, whatever you are. If you're going to go out of your way to be so ignorantly pompous about who you are, to push through someone with a disability to get onto a football field when you've got a whole night to celebrate, you don't deserve respect. And this isn't the first time Michael Bennett has been involved with something like this. I'm not going to touch on the police brutality thing because I really don't think, as a white male from England, I have much place to comment on that. However, with something like this, I do. Because it's not right. However, there are a few things to note. One, Super Bowl LI was now 14 months ago. So it's a little strange that after holding a press conference, the body that had actually taken Bennett into custody and that put out the arrest for the warrant for an arrest, I beg your pardon, had said that there was no footage of it, so there's no video evidence or anything like that. But the officer had seen Bennett do it and had chosen instead of actually approaching Michael Bennett, who had just pushed past a disabled female, to let it go. To just watch it and go, do you know what? Okay, I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with the fact that a 66-year-old disabled woman has just been pushed by a 300-pound monster. So 14 months later, here we are. Why didn't the team reach out sooner? Because there were bigger cases apparently, and they didn't want to reach out to a team. Now, I don't care if it's the police or what the idea is. If something like this happens, you don't go, oh, we might have a game this Sunday, I can't reach out. It's not about reaching out to... I know the damage reaching out to an employer could do regarding a legal case, but you can at least find something with regards to an agent, with regards to a contact for the player. But no, 14 months later, it all comes to light, and the second part is, I suppose, and I really don't want to go down this road, but I mean, it seems very strange that someone of 66 years of age who is paraplegic is on a security team at the biggest sporting event in the world. Now, I know equality is a huge thing, and I'm not saying at all that she shouldn't be. We don't know in what capacity. I'm not saying she was a security guard, for instance, but I would find it puzzling to kind of put someone in a position of vulnerability. If I was an employer, you know, it's something you bear in mind. And again, that's not saying anything bad, because obviously equality is massive and she is just as able to do her job as anyone else on this planet. But you have to work. It's a puzzling decision. Okay? The other thing is what this means for the Eagles. Now, if he is arrested, if something happens, I mean, the belief is at the moment that neither the Seahawks nor the Eagles actually knew of what was going on. So no one had a clue. This is all relatively new. But that means Michael Bennett did. And Michael Bennett is an NFL player who does so much work in the community, knew what he was doing. He's carried that with him for nearly 14 months. He's been traded to another team. There's got to be a question. Anything we should know about before we, you know, trade away one of our players in a draft pick for you? You know, a pro bowler, a role model. No, nothing. Okay, fine, cool. I mean, given how the Eagles' culture has shifted, it would not surprise me to see Michael Bennett now either kicked off the team, been released, shopped around for trade blocked again. It doesn't help Michael Bennett's image at all to be known as and unfortunately saying this as well, but a locker room cancer last year. Now you've got guys like Chris Long who stick up for Bennett because he's standing up for what he believes in, and I completely agree with that, 110% behind that. I think there are other things behind the scenes that say why does a locker room cancer is much more than taking a knee for equality or making a point about social injustice. There's got to be more behind the scenes than that. And given the track record of off-the-field incidents, it would not surprise me. But anyway, the Eagles bring in Michael Bennett. This now happens. Now, given their tolerance... Now, bearing in mind, when the gun at the airport incident happened with Nigel Bradham, talking of guns, I forgot Josh Huff's DUI, by the way, off the aforementioned culture change. But when Nigel Bradham's incident happened at the airport in the middle of the season, he was benched. The first half of that Detroit game, he was benched. And the Eagles sucked. The defense was leaking all over the place, and they put him back in. But there was a stern point made, and Jim Schwartz went out of his way in a press conference to call him a dumbass. And it was very much a wake-up call. And since then, we've not really seen anything bad. That was very much, I think, a statement for the Eagles, and very well made indeed. But what do they do now? Because what they've done is they've mortgaged everything on Bennett. Chris Long has said that he wants to be back with the Eagles, and they've given him more money because they felt bad he gave all his away, which defies the object of it if you ask me. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. They got rid of Vinnie Curry. They decided to release Vinnie Curry, who then signed a deal with the Bucks. So if they get rid of Bennett, you're down with Long, who is still in a position where he could say no, he could retire. And then have you got Brandon Graham, who's got 1 year left on his deal and needs an extension, or he's gone. Derek Barnett. Stephen Means. All of a sudden, it doesn't look too frightening. And the Eagles are going to be wary of that. And it is a horrible, horrible situation to be in. But they've got to take a look at that and go, is this the sort of role model we want on our team? Now, we don't know in what capacity this has happened. Has this actually been a legitimate incident? Has it been put back for a reason? Nothing gets out in the media unless someone wants it out. Now, I know obviously the arrest has happened today, or the warrant for it, so it's a tricky situation to be in, because without so-called video evidence, it's hard to really pinpoint what happened. Was it a shove? What was the extent of the injury? Who filed the claim? Why wasn't it reprimanded at the time? There's a lot going on that we need to be aware of, and I think that it's tricky to make a judgment. But however, if he is proven guilty or something happens, the Eagles have to take a stand. Because as much as sustaining success is great, and Bennett could be a great player, sustaining that culture to me is much, much more important than any kind of on-the-field success. And Bennett could be a stand-up guy in the locker room. He could be a leader. He could be a community champion. He could do loads of great things for the city of Seattle like he could do for Philadelphia. But if you're going to be a role model for Super Bowl champions, you do not shove 66-year-old paraplegic women out of the way so you can get on a field to celebrate a victory with your brother. You go around a door like everyone else. You're not more important. You have no social status that allows you to do that. You do not get put in this bubble where nothing impacts you because of who you are. You're held to the same standard as the rest of us, and that standard is respect. And that's it. And that, for me, is all I've got to say on it. But I did want to move on quickly to something a bit more positive, and that was the off-season signings that have been, other than that, very positive so far. We're going to talk very quickly about Mike Wallace, who, you know, the former Ravens wide receiver who's replacing Torrey Smith. So Smith was traded away for Darryl Worley, so the Panthers cornerback who's come in, still young, bit of upside there. The Eagles shake off Torrey Smith's roster room and some cap space, and they instead bring in 31-year-old Mike Wallace, who is scheduled to make less than Torrey Smith, had nearly double the production last year, and having just done a film room video on Mike Wallace, I would say that the Eagles have struck gold in free agency once again. Now, bearing in mind that everyone's saying straight away that he's 31 years old, he can't do it anymore, that he slowed down, that he regressed in Baltimore, and he's just not the same player that he was than during that Pro Bowl 2011 season, or one of those 1,000-yard years that he's had. I, however, would say the opposite. Breaking down the tape today, he's been absolutely sensational. I've not seen speed like that from a veteran in so long. To drive to the outside and be so dominant, there's a reason why he's shockingly one of only 10 active players with 8,000 career yards and 500 career receptions. Do you want to know who he's joining? AB, Larry Fitz, Antonio Gates, AJ Green, Deshaun Jackson, Julio Jones. Need I go on? Need I go on? He's also the only active player to have 500 receptions and 50 receiving touchdowns, while averaging 15 yards per reception. 15. The 6 foot, 199 pound wideout didn't really shine in 2017. He had 4 scores, 748 yards. But when you look at the tape, in my opinion, that was 1,000 yards. That was a 1,000-yard season if Joe Flacco was marginally accurate, didn't underthrow, didn't overthrow, didn't just throw the ball away, or actually went through his reads and looked at how lethal Wallace could be. Wallace was ripping apart secondaries last year, especially in zone coverage. His ability to plant the foot in the ground and turn and drop his hips into a route so smoothly. Honestly, the one thing I said coming away from that was, imagine what that's going to be like for Nelson Aguilar. To look at a route runner at the age of 31 who's so crisp, who's so clean, and go, you know what? I can learn a lot from that. Wallace is one of the best route runners in the game. He has been since the day he came into the league. Now, he may not have the catch radius, he may not have the explosiveness, he may not have the well-roundedness that someone like an Alshon Jeffrey does. But as a deep threat, there's a lot that the Eagles receivers could learn from a player like Mike Wallace. And a lot of the people who are currently Matt Hollins stands and are milli rocking all over the place saying that that's the guy who should be outside. Hollins was a slot. Most of Matt Hollins' danger threats, most of the big plays came from the slot. When Nelson Aguilar was out and he rotated in, he's very much the Chris Hogan of this Eagles offense. I said it from day one. Now, for me, that logical WR2 is either Shelton Gibson or it's now Mike Wallace. And I will go with Mike Wallace 100% of the time. You want Shelton Gibson behind as a 4. And you keep Matt Hollins where he is. Because he is so lethal from that slot. But for me, the biggest off-season signing of the season, Nigel Bradham. And there is nothing you can do to convince me otherwise. Because for me, if not the best linebacker in the league in coverage, he is a damn close second. And I said it again, since the moment he was signing with the Eagles out of Buffalo in 2016, the lateral movement he brings, the versatility to come down and hit the passer or be so efficient in the run, Bradham's remarkable. And even this year, where he was finally getting the respect he deserves and people were putting the spotlight on him and saying how important he was, he's still underrated. And then the Eagles sign him to a contract which is team-friendly, then he's still underrated. Bradham was the heartbeat of that defense last year. When Hicks went down, it was Michael Kendricks, who could be inconsistent at times, and a combination of Joe Walker and Najee Good. Bradham held it down, and somehow, even when Hicks goes, the Eagles have the best run defense in the league. Nigel Bradham was integral in the success of that defense last year. And to see him come back, I don't think anyone understands how important that truly is. That, for me, that's a franchise quarterback of the defense. Easily. And now when you look at who the Eagles have got signed through 2020, it's Wentz, it's Ertz, it's Jeffrey. It's nearly the entire offensive line with Johnson and Brooks and Kelsey. On defense, it's Fletcher Cox, it's Timmy Jernigan, it's Nigel Bradham, it's Malcolm Jenkins. Your core is there. And if you take Bradham out of it, knowing you've got to invest in that linebacker position, with Jordan Hicks having only played one full season, because of those injury concerns that just keep haunting his career, that keep trying to tie him down, Bradham's important. Because if you lose Jordan Hicks for a third season out of 4, you're in trouble. especially if that's not addressed. Now, you can look at some of the guys in the draft, like your Leighton Van Der Esch. Or you can look at some of the hybrid players, someone like Rashaan Evans. But if they're not going to step up right away, and you're leaving other positions like tight end undrawn, then you're in trouble. And Bradham solves that problem. Because you know what you get. What has he done other than impress? What has Bradham done other than be solid, than be consistent, than be impressive? Name me one game. Like, think back on the last 2 years. 32 games almost of Eagles football. Probably more than that with the postseason. You're looking around 36, 37. Name me one game where you thought, Nigel Bradham wasn't very good. Nigel Bradham was a bit disappointing. In 2017, he was third on the defense with 85 tackles. Last year, you take a look at some of the big plays he made. Alright, now this is off the top of the dome. Think back. Just think Nigel Bradham in your head. You think the third down sack on Matt Ryan in the NFC divisional round. You think some of the huge impact tackles he made that almost demoralised some of the running backs on the field. Forcing a fumble against the Rams in week 14. That was, of course, scooped up by Brandon Graham. In the postseason run, he had 12 tackles, 1 sack, and a pass defense in 3 games. He's been absolutely remarkable. And do you know what the best thing is? The best thing, okay? He signed in 2016. He's had 2 seasons. And he leads all Eagles linebackers in tackles, sacks, forced fumbles, passes defensed, and snaps played. And you're telling me that this guy is not deserving. I promise you, this was the best decision the Eagles have done. A 5-year contract for a linebacker who was drafted in the 4th round, who in my opinion has now become one of, if not the best player on defense. Last year, I think I said he was like the 3rd best player on defense, or the most important. I think he could be even higher. Outside of Malcolm Jenkins, the defensive line rotation, I think, would be one unique player in itself, because I think it's difficult to tell Fletcher Cox was the most valuable or Jernigan was the most valuable. Although I would arguably state Jernigan because he opened up so much for the rest of the defensive line. Nigel Bradham, for me, was the most valuable player on defense last year. Period. And I think that the Eagles have done a fantastic job in keeping him in bringing him back for a 5-year extension. And considering as well how much they've lost, when you look back at this offseason and you see just how difficult it's been with the salary cap. When we first ended the Super Bowl, it was, oh my word, what are the team going to do now? Because they're $9 million over the cap space. Brandon Graham wants an extension. They're going to lose Bradham. Patrick Robinson's probably going to go. What do? And Howie Roseman started working magic. He got players to restructure their contracts. He started moving money around. He cut players. He saw the business side of football. And then he partnered it hand in hand with the culture and signed the biggest impact player on this team to a 5-year extension. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know we're 38 minutes into this podcast. But again, if you haven't subscribed yet on iTunes, do hit that link in the description below. Follow us on Twitter, at LiamJenkins21, at PhiladelphiaSN. If you've got any questions as well you want to hear on the show, let me know. We'll get them read out. This is going to be a weekly thing. But I wanted to end with this as well. Now, we know the importance of the Eagles' 1st round pick. They're picking at 32. There aren't any picks on day 2 of the NFL draft, so it's a crucial pick. And for me, it could go a lot of ways. I think we all know that now. Is it going to go tight end without Brent Selleck? Are they going to bring someone in? Someone like Dalton Schultz in the 4th round, perhaps, out of Stanford? Where's that 1st round pick being spent? I would say, do not be surprised if they go safety. Because the same source told me this, that last year, and I can find the report, it was written in February last year, that the Eagles will build through the trenches. They will build the offensive and the defensive line, and they will draft a lineman. Derek Barnett. 1st round. This year, having spoken to 2 safety prospects, both of whom have spoke with the Eagles, one's formally met with them, and of course another source as well. Don't write it off. The Eagles could well be drafting a safety in the first round. There are a few different options available. There are some big names available. And as you go deeper down into that class, it's a very deep defensive back class this year. But think about it. And I want you to think about this very, very carefully. As to why would the Eagles draft a safety when they've just lost their starting nickel cornerback, Patrick Robinson, to the New Orleans Saints? Why would they draft a safety when they've got Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod? Why would they draft a safety when they only have one tight end that's played regular season football? Why would they draft a tight end when there are so many other needs that could be prioritised, including a running back, given that now LeGarrette Blount's gone, they could probably do with some more help on that side of the field as well. Let's look at it from this angle, okay? Jalen Watkins is a restricted free agent who's met with the 49ers, and I believe, according to a source, now again, I think I need to verify this, but he's got a meeting with a few other teams, one of which is the Detroit Lions, who are very high on him. It's a versatile DB. They've got Chris Maragos, who spent the year on IR, but is of course a core special teams player. Trey Sullivan, who was a training camp standout, but out of Shepherd didn't really do much, couldn't quite carve a role due to overcrowding. And Corey Graham has just been released into free agency. So that leaves you with 2 players, okay? I mean, aside from Nate Jerry, who is kind of a mix between the two, but is actually on the roster as a linebacker, there isn't really a lot of depth there outside of the starters. So why should the team invest in a linebacker? Look at a safety that Malcolm Jenkins played last season. Arguably, again, one of the team's most impactful players. How often was he standing over the top as a strong safety or a free safety? He played in the nickel, he played at linebacker, he played in the box, out the box, pass rushing, all over the field. He is the Eagles' greatest defensive weapon because you can move him around so goddamn easily. Well, I mean, of course you can if you've got 2 safeties back there. And without Corey Graham or Jalen Watkins, they don't have that. And Rodney McLeod had a bit of an inconsistent year. Few missed tackles, few big plays given up. If the Eagles want to move Jenkins around and have him in such a Kurt Coleman type role, then they need talent back there. And if you can then develop someone like a Ronnie Harrison, who we'll have an exclusive interview with in the run-up to the draft, like a Justin Reed, who could well be built in the same vein as a Malcolm Jenkins, or draws plenty of similarities to his older brother Eric Reed, or Trey Matthews out of Auburn, who we spoke to at Philly Sports Network, and he told me that when he spoke with the Eagles, he had a chat with them, he was confused as to why they were interested. He said, "You've got 2 safeties, why do you need me?" They told him, "We need 2 good safeties back there." Now, don't light your pitchforks just yet. That doesn't mean a safety's going anywhere or being traded. To me, that says Malcolm Jenkins moves around so much on that defense. He flies around like a hornet. He's everywhere. He's rushing the passer. He's blowing up the run game. He's helping at the linebacker position. He's in the nickel. He's over the top. He would be a quarterback if you asked him to. I think the only thing he hasn't done is kick a field goal. But if you need him running around, if you need that, you can't allow Malcolm Jenkins to be Malcolm Jenkins without firm stability behind. And the Eagles had a lot of injury problems at safety last year, and with Corey Graham and Jalen Watkins potentially both not returning, they need someone there. And with the Jim Schwartz defense being so ruthless and so tenacious, do not be surprised if the Eagles draft a safety in the first round. That is all for the Outside Insider podcast, episode 1. I think it must be series 3 now. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It's been a pleasure bringing this back. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Again, if you have, please leave a like. Go on iTunes, rate it 5 stars. Let's get this ascending up the top, because we're not taking prisoners this year. Alright, we are not sitting back and accepting mediocrity just as the Eagles didn't last year. We're not just going to be another Eagles podcast. We're going to be the best Eagles podcast. We're going to have players, we're going to have coaches, we're going to have scouts, we're going to have writers as guests. And we won't stop till we get to the top. So if you want to be part of this, if you want to help us mould this podcast to be part of something bigger, hit those 5 stars on iTunes, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next week for another episode of The Outside Insider. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy your week.